Today, I have the great pleasure to speak with you about Lao Tzu. Lao Tzu was a contemporary of Confucius. And keep in mind that at the same time known as the axial age, when Confucius and Lao Tzu were teaching and building their philosophies, this is the same time that we see in history the emergence of the Buddha. We see the emergence of the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Hebrew Scriptures. This is an important age, a seminal age for humanity and for philosophical and religious thinking. And it's important to see all of this in that context because at this time in human history, people were asking the same questions. And interestingly, they were coming up with similar answers. Now, one thing that I hope that you remember, if you remember nothing else about this lecture, is what I hope you carry away about religion itself. Religion, faith, is a reflection of a people, a place, and a time. Change any one of those elements, change the people, change the place, change the time, and you have altered the context and the meaning and the purpose and the power of that religion. It is all about context, and religion is a reflection of context. Most of us here today are of a certain faith, not necessarily because we've gone through our lives struggling and trying all kinds of different faiths. Most of us are believers of a given faith because we were born to a family of that same faith. If you were born in India, chances are you are Hindu. If you were born in Vietnam, chances are you are Buddhist. If you were born in the United States, chances are you are Christian. It's no accident, and yet it's completely by accident. Today we're going to talk about Lao Tzu and the power of his teachings, and I hope that you can see the similarities to your faith background. So I would ask you today, whatever your faith background might be, to see and to listen with eyes of believers. Because it's only in this context that we can understand, and in understanding, find compassion. The life of Lao Tzu, the Chinese philosopher. Lao Tzu, or Lao Tzu, was a Chinese philosopher believed to have lived in the 5th or 6th century BCE. And when we see BCE, it means largely the same thing, exactly the same thing as BC. In the old historical sense, we use BC for before Christ. Now we say BCE, which is before Common Era. And when we see AD, it means Anno Domini, in the year of our Lord, which we speak of in the year of after the birth of Jesus Christ. Today we use CE, or Common Era, out of respect for people of all religious backgrounds. Lao Tzu is considered the author of the Taoist classic, the Tao Te Ching, which means the way, which offers a challenging spiritual philosophy based on an underlying unity of the universe. The work of Lao Tzu has a timeless appeal and is the foundation of Daoism, the religion itself, and many other spiritual philosophies. It remains relevant today and is the foundation of many great schools of philosophy. Historians are uncertain about the historical facts of Lao Tzu's life. In fact, there's even doubt that Lao Tzu existed at all. Most prominent sources suggest that Lao Tzu was born with the birth name of Erli in the 5th or the 6th century BCE. The name Lao Tzu, which means great old master, has been used in different ways. So he is known both as Lao Tzu or Lao Tzu. The strongest historical sources suggest that Lao Tzu worked as a scholar and served as the keeper of the archives for the royal court of Zhao. Lao Tzu would have had access to all of the great documents, all of the great readings and books that were in this library, and he probably would have had chance and time to read them. In doing this, he formed his own philosophy. What's interesting to note, however, is that his philosophy went beyond the synthesis of past ideas. Now, this is where he differs from Confucius, because Confucius said, follow the old ways. There was an old way of doing things. We have only to follow those old ways, and we are on the right path. Lao Tzu said, not so much. We need to think differently. We need to create a new way of thinking. And his thoughts were much more mystical, and he worked in paradoxical analogies. Many of the great teachers taught in paradox, for those of you who are Christian. Much of Jesus' teaching is in paradox. Much of Buddha's teaching is also in paradox. And what's really interesting about the Tao Te Ching is the power of paradox and the way it allows us to compare and contrast and to challenge our held beliefs and to think differently. Here's a great example from the Tao Te Ching. Knowing others is intelligence. Knowing yourself is true wisdom. Mastering others is strength, while mastering yourself is pure power. The philosophy and teachings of Lao Tzu attracted many students and disciples. However, there's no record of an actual school. The essence of his teachings was very simple: to live in the way of the Tao, to live and to follow the way. Hear that again, the way. Gospel of John, he said that Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Buddhist following often talks about the way that we must follow. There was 4 noble ways, 4 noble truths, and then the eightfold path. They're all ways. And now Lao Tzu is saying, I have a different way for you to consider. The classic of mystical philosophy is called the Tao Te Ching. The Tao Te Ching gives advice for a seeker to go beyond one's limited ego and gain a greater appreciation for the invisible power that underlies and underscores the entire universe. That all of us are connected. All of us draw our sense and our source of being from this power. And to not be connected to it is to not be in the flow with harmony. But to be connected to it and to know that one is rooted in this truth, the truth of the way, the harmony of the universe, is to give you peace and to give you direction to live in the right way. The Tao Te Ching is a classical of mystical philosophy. It challenges conventional wisdom in the earthly pursuit of wealth, power, and success. He said, this isn't the way, wealth and power and success. It seems like it must be because the world says that we must have things. And it's okay to have. The problem is with holding. So the question becomes, how do we have without holding? How do we live without grasping? By contrast, Lao Tzu says, you should pursue humility, modesty, and simplicity in your life, in your words, and in your actions. He said, wise men don't need to prove their point, and men who need to prove their point aren't wise. The master has no possessions. In fact, the more he does for others, the happier he is. The more he gives to others, the wealthier he is. And we know this today. Wealth is not about the accumulation of things. We know that true wealth comes when we give freely what we have to others. That is what makes us happiest. That is what true wealth of spirit and of soul is. And so he stands against this conventional wisdom. He also talks about leadership, and he says that the best leaders lead from behind. They don't grasp for power, but they use gentle methods of persuasion to keep people on the right track. He says, the Tao nourishes not by forcing, by not dominating, the master leads. According to the Tao, the ultimate goal of life is to attain the state of Wu Wei, free from desires. And this is very similar to Buddhism. This can be achieved by emptying the mind and going beyond awareness of the body and the human ego. And for those of you who meditate, you're familiar with this. It's the idea of beginning your days and ending your days with really a firm and clear seeing that we are all connected, that there is no self, that I am you and you are me, and when we harm each other, we harm ourselves. And when we love each other, it's the purest form of loving ourselves as well. The Tao was written with the goal of transcending mere literal understanding. Many of the texts that were written wanted us to read and to follow rules. There were guidelines in place. This one takes a different path. It talks about the virtue of ignorance. Well, how could there be virtue in ignorance? Well, if you read it as such, it doesn't really make much sense, does it? But it means the absence of worldly vanity and false pride and material knowledge. When we're in an argument, oftentimes the question is not about what's true, but who's going to win. And in any discussion, when I find myself moving away from the pursuit of truth, I realize in that moment when I'm getting angry that I'm no longer interested in the truth. What I'm interested in is winning. And winning is prideful. It's ego. It no longer seeks the truth. The Tao also avoids the fundamentalism of religious texts. It doesn't set out a list of commandments, but it sets a path, that all of us have a path to follow. If you remember from the movie City Slickers, for those of you who remember that show with Billy Crystal, and he said, what's the one thing that matters? What's the one thing? And it's the one thing that changes all of our lives. But none of us can tell the other what it is, because it's different for each one of us. And so is the way, so is the Tao. There is a way for each of us. There is one truth, but wise men know it as many. And in the same way, there is one path, but we follow different paths to the same goal. And all of us should be focused on that same goal of freedom from worldly possessions, of this desire to have more, and the focus on giving more. This is what the Tao says. The Tao is teachable, yet understanding my words is not the same as following the Tao. The guidance is describable, yet knowing the description is not the same as following the guidance. And here it's very clear. It's not just about hearing, it's about doing. And this is where the Tao sets itself apart. It's not just about believing in something, it's about living it truly. Lao Tzu and Confucius were likely contemporaries. Confucius was an eminent scholar and philosopher in his own right, but Confucius promoted a more formal philosophy, which emphasized adherence to the old rules and the elders. Lao Tzu took a more intuitive approach, liberal approach, which emphasized the importance of being in tune and in harmony with the universe. They both appreciated each other, as it was said, for their respective approaches. The three masters of Chinese philosophy, Master Shuang, Confucius, and Lao Tzu, are the most notable Chinese philosophers. The Zhuangzi and the Tao Te Ching are the two cornerstones of Daoism. In one version of Lao Tzu's life, written by Sima Qian from the Han Dynasty, and again now we're talking about nearly 300 years after Lao Tzu was said to have lived, this is when these stories were written. And it's interesting because, and we have to take all of this with a grain of sand because we don't know. We don't know if he lived. We don't know where he lived. These are all stories that are told to us beginning 300 years after his death. But he said that the story goes that Lao Tzu became discouraged by the moral decay and worldliness of the city. Seeking peace to meditate, he resolved to leave the city and live as a hermit in the mountains. We see the same story with Jesus. We see it with John the Baptist. We see it with St. Francis of Assisi. Almost all great thinkers, even Moses, went to the mountain to get away from all of the distractions. It says to us that we need to take time away from the distractions of the world to think and to discover who we are and what our purpose is. It says, though, that at the western gate of the city, as Lao Tzu was trying to pass by, he was stopped by a guard, Yingxi, who asked Lao Tzu to write down all of his wisdom for the benefit of citizens. Basically saying, you can't pass until you write down everything that you know. And it was at this juncture that Lao Tzu wrote down the Tao Te Ching. In some versions of the story, Yingxi was so impressed with the words and with this prophet and philosopher that he decided to follow him and became the first disciple of Lao Tzu and became a model Taoist student. His words would go on to become the foundation for Daoism. In some branches of Taoism, Lao Tzu is actually seen as a god. Lao Tzu is viewed as a perfect personification of the Tao, and throughout history, he appeared to lead humanity towards this goal. Modern scholars discount the possibility that the Tao Te Ching was written by only one person. Instead, it's probably a collection of phrases written by many people and many generations of people. Because it was written in the form of singular ideas, it doesn't tell a story like the Gospels. It doesn't tell a story like the Hebrew Scriptures. It's more like the Analects, a collection of aphorisms and phrases that are meant to guide. The style is poetic. The rhetorical style combines two major strategies: short declarative statements and then intentional contradictions. So here's what you think you know, and I'm going to turn that on its head. The first of these strategies creates memorable phrases, while the second forces the reader to reconcile the supposed contradictions. Lao Tzu is venerated as a philosopher by Confucians and as a saint or god in popular religion, and was worshipped during the Tang Dynasty. Today, the name Lao Tzu seems to represent a certain type of person as much as it did the actual man. During the Han Dynasty, Lao Tzu had already become a mythical figure who was worshipped by people and occasionally even worshipped by the emperor. Later, in religious circles, he became the revealer of sacred texts to all mankind. And this is similar again now to what we see in Muhammad, revealing the sacred text of the Quran that the archangel Gabriel gave to him. So we see these comparisons and these similarities. There were several stories about his birth, one of which was influenced by the legend of the miraculous birth of Buddha. Lao Tzu's mother is said to have carried him 72 years in her womb, and he entered the world through her left flank. Zeus was also supposedly born in a similar fashion. So we see now the connection to the Greek gods, right? But this idea that he was born already fully formed, a man, 72 years old, no mention of the mother's condition. Two legends were particularly important in the creed of the Taoists. According to the first legend, Lao Tzu was believed to have adopted different personalities throughout history and have come down to earth several times to instruct the rulers in Taoist doctrine. So here now, we see not only was he a man, but now he became a god who came back to earth to instruct us. Ring any bells? In the second legend, the Buddha was thought to be none other than Lao Tzu himself. So again, we see this idea of reincarnation, entering the karmic wheel that he would go on, but not go to complete nirvana. He became what we would call in Buddhism a bodhisattva, someone who would come back and teach others and guide them in the way to enlightenment. Some of his most significant teachings are on the following themes. Lao Tzu noted that violence and conflict, no matter how tightly controlled, could not help but cause negative side effects. The Taoist method is to solve problems through peaceful means. The foolish expend a great deal of energy trying to do everything and end up doing nothing. The idea of non-action is the idea that on the other end of the spectrum, the truly wise don't seem to do much of anything at all, and yet achieve most everything that they want. This magic is possible, indeed unavoidable, when one is in tune with the Tao. We know this ourselves in our careers and in our lives. When we're in the right place at the right time, doesn't everything work for us? And it doesn't seem that it takes much effort. And yet at other times of our life when we seem out of touch with things and out of contact with ourselves and with the world, it seems like everything is a struggle. And this is what he means by non-action, that when we put others first, when we live according to the way and the harmony of the universe, that these things come to us. Non-intention is another premise of Taoism. How often do we do good deeds hoping to receive praise or recognition? That's not virtue at all. Even Jesus said the same. If you go and you pray on the street corners looking for people to recognize you, that's not the way of virtue. Better to go to your room and to pray in private where only your Father in heaven will hear you. In the same way, when you do good deeds, do them for the sake of doing good, not so that someone else sees you. True virtue is a state where such actions flow naturally, requiring no conscious efforts or thought. And this leads us to the idea of who we are. Our intentions guide our words and our actions. So when we live this way, our intentions flow naturally from the state. We don't need to think about it or try. We simply are. One of the great elements of Taoism is also simplicity. The basis for our reality and our existence is elemental and uncomplicated. It's we who complicate it, as Confucius would have said as well. Human beings create a lot of trouble for themselves by making everything more complex than it needs to be. If we only learn, he says, to simplify our lives, we can experience a profound satisfaction that is infinitely more meaningful than the rewards of the material world. Wisdom is another important part. Logic has its place in human affairs, but it's not everything. There's a limit to what we can understand through reason. For those of us who are focused on only reason, we know that life doesn't make much sense, because much of the world isn't founded and focused on reason. To really understand, we need to transcend the limits of reason. We need to engage our intuition. That's which has been given to us to understand what our reason simply can't allow us to grasp. And we all know that we have this intuition that guides us to make certain decisions. Humility, a foundational principle of Taoism. The more you learn, the more you realize that there's so much more to learn. Knowing that you know little leads us to humility. Arrogance and egotism come from ignorance. Those who think they know are the ones who are often the ones assuming that they know a lot and you know very little. Duality, this principle of yin and yang, good and bad, light and darkness. The principle of duality is found throughout many of our Asian mystical philosophies, and certainly in Daoism. Lao Tzu pointed out that all qualities in the world possess meaning only by the existence of their opposites. Something can be big only if there's something else small by comparison. There can only be good if there is bad and evil. This is an interesting way of looking at, again, this theodicy that we talked about in the last lecture. How do we understand this nature of God as being all good and all powerful, and yet evil existing in the world? And this helps us understand that there must be evil in the world in order for good to exist as well. Qi is another foundational element, literally translated as air, vapors, the ether, breathing energy. Qi also means power, atmosphere, temperament, and it's the vital force that is inside each one of us. Some would say it's the soul. It's the breath of spirit, of life. This is our qi. Te, which is from the Tao Te Ching, is virtue and power. So the Tao Te Ching is the way of power, the way of virtue. These are the qualities that give the Tao everything. And the Tao gives to everything. The power gained by attaining Tao. So what is Taoism? Taoism is not a religion, and it's not a philosophy. It's a choice. It's a way of life. It's a way of seeing the world differently. It's a way of questioning everything around you, not accepting anything at face value, and really knowing the truth behind what you see and the truth behind what it is that you think you know. It is a river. The Tao is the natural order of things. It's a force that lives through every living being as well as through the entire universe. When the Tao is in balance, it's possible to find perfect happiness. Can you celebrate life and not cling to it? Can you give up control and still make progress? Can you achieve your goals without forcing? How I wish I would have known some of these answers when I was starting my businesses. It would have saved me a lot of headache and heartache. Taoism deeply respects the passive, receptive part of existence, which is greatly undervalued. It's the feminine side that in a male-dominated world has often been ignored. We're so focused as men on dominating, on winning, on earning, on projecting our power and our influence that we forget that sometimes sitting, being thoughtful, reflective, is the surest way to bring people to our understanding and to our side. That in order to be understood, we first must seek to understand. The words of St. Francis of Assisi. But it's this idea that forcing and pushing aren't always the best ways to get things done. And there's a time for everything. This isn't to say that we should be passive and let the world come unto us. That's not the point. The point is to recognize the time in our lives when pushing isn't in the natural way of things. There's a time for pushing and there's a time for sitting back and letting the world come to us and appreciating it, being quiet. There's a time to speak, there's a time to remain in silence. And to know the times, to know the places is the key to success and happiness in life. How can we let go and let ourselves be carried along with the river of life? How can we live more effortlessly with less stress and anxiety? How can we live a rich life and enjoy it to the fullest with minimal interference of the natural source of life and life events? The Tao says, don't force anything. A master doesn't force virtue on others. Not forcing action allows others to choose. All that we can do is be who we are and allow others to see who we are and to choose that in their lives. We can't force someone to accept us. We can't force someone to see our way or even to want to see our way. We can only be our truest self and then let others choose their own path. The ordinary person who uses force will find that they accomplish nothing. In several chapters of the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu writes about the principles of not forcing. When we force, we go against the natural flow of things, which most likely gets us into trouble. Oftentimes, we think that if we push hard enough, we'll eventually get where we want to go, pushing square pegs through round holes, as it were. For some things, pushing hard consistently leads to results. We know this. Hard work leads to good results. But again, it's not just about hard work. It's about working smart. It's about making sure that we're not doubling and tripling our efforts to get someplace that we probably won't get to because of these efforts. We need to sometimes sit, take a break, and look and see if we're in the flow of things. Lao Tzu observed that nature has its own way of doing things. We see nature manifests itself in a certain order. Some things are big and heavy while other things are small and light. Some things take ages to grow while other things are born and die in the same day. We aren't all of the same nature. We aren't all of the same purpose. We humans are bound to the flow of nature as well. The way we grow from infants to adults, the way we learn, the way our bodies function, all is bound by the laws of nature that we cannot control. How long are we helpless in need of someone else's help for the very basics of our life? And then in the balance of that, at the end of our lives, aren't we also in need of that same type of help again? My father is 97, lives with us. And as we left, he fell into some medical concerns, is in the hospital now. And for the past 14 years as he's been living with us, we've seen him go from the strong man who raised all of us 10 children to now becoming a man who needs our care. And it's okay. We have to say that this is part of the way. This is the nature of things. And the beauty of him is that while many men at that age are angry and frustrated that they now have to rely on people to take care of them, he's okay with it. Sometimes I think he's a little too okay with it. But that's the jokes that we have. And again, these are the wonderful lessons that we see in life that teaches us over and over again, and the Tao shows us very clearly. When we swim against the current, we all have our mind on some place on the shore. Let's say we're out on the water and we find ourselves lost. And we look to the shore and we want to swim back to that one spot that we have in mind. We want to get to that place. And we swim hard. And yet the current keeps pulling us back. It pulls us away. And yet when we know the ebb and the flow of the current, if we just look further over on another part of the beach, we can see that that's where the waves are leading. And we can simply go with the flow, and we get to the beach. It just may not be the same point on the beach that we had hoped for. And isn't that the natural way of things? Isn't that the story of our lives? When we find a way to work with nature instead of against it, life is easier, says the Tao. This means working smart instead of working hard, by setting our sails correctly and navigating diligently so that the winds of the universe keep pushing us forward. The Tao also says, don't overburden yourself. Those who stand on tiptoes do not stand firmly, it says. Those who rush ahead don't get very far. Those who try to outshine others dim their own light. Pushing boundaries in and of itself isn't a bad thing. In fact, pushing beyond our limits is what helps us grow. For those of you who are exercising, you know that strength training is this way. You have to push beyond your limits sometimes to overstimulate the muscles to grow them. And by breaking down the muscles, you help build new muscles, bigger muscles, stronger muscles. But what we forget is that we also have to take a rest. And when you see these muscle heads in the gym pushing themselves day after day after day and working for 5 and 6 hours to get these bigger muscles, one of the things that they forget is that chronic exhaustion leads to a lower immune system. It stops them from achieving their goal, because in all of these things we have to find the balance. We have to take rest. You push and then you rest. You push again and you rest. And this is the way of the Tao. It's the ebb and the flow of the tides. It's the ebb and the flow of life. Pushing too hard, however, puts us at risk. Lao Tzu would describe this as standing on tiptoes. He argues that when we stand on our tiptoes, we don't stand firmly. There always needs to be a balance between action and inaction, between the effort we put into things and the time we need to let the mind and the body recover. So it is in relationships. That's why vacations are so important. We take time for each other. We take time for ourselves to regain, to regroup, and to refocus so we can go back to our lives with renewed purpose and focus. This should give us strength this time away, this time apart, this time aside. Stretching ourselves beyond our means may get more work done in the short term, but it also makes us weak and vulnerable. Many of us have been in this position that we're reading about right now, taking a mortgage out for more than we could probably afford and hoping that we can pay the bills. As long as you have a great job and your business is growing, it's all good. But then, if something goes wrong, you know the pressure that takes, the toll that it takes on your life when you no longer have the means to live according to your responsibilities. We must learn to distinguish need from want, says the Tao. Often we push ourselves to get the things that we want, but not the things that we need. How true is this? We will spend hours online shopping or even going to the shops, right? And then we won't spend the $100 for a massage, right? Because we think it's too much. And yet what our body calls for after a day of hard work is massages, relaxation, or to take that time with a friend and sit down and have the coffee. We don't take these things, but we focus instead on the having. And the Tao says to us, realign your priorities, think differently, that the things that you have might be the problems that you also have. The more wealth you possess, the harder it is to protect. The Romans learned this the hard way, as has almost every great nation building country since then. Quite simply, when you fill a cup to the brim, it becomes quite difficult to carry around. And so it is with our possessions, and so it also is with the burdens that we put on ourselves mentally. Relinquish control is a great lesson of the Tao. Only you are within the realm of your control. So often we try to control everything around us, focusing little on ourselves, that which is within the realm of our control. Thinking you control or that you have control is an illusion, much like wealth. We carry none of it, only for a time. None of it is real. It's all perceived. According to Lao Tzu, the world is a sacred vessel and it cannot be controlled. You will only make it worse for yourself if you try. Have you ever observed that many of the problems in our lives are solved by themselves? Intervening isn't always necessary. Moreover, in many cases, intervention only creates more problems. Everything is in motion, says the Tao. All of life is change. All of life is in motion, which means that circumstances change all the time, and that today's problems can be tomorrow's blessings. So to consider, before taking any extreme action, whether or not the problem you have today might find its solution tomorrow without any action at all. We can see that in the workplace often there's this one manager. For those of you who are in management throughout your lives, you may know this story. And for most of us who have had jobs know this story, that there's one manager who always seems to cause problems, breathing down people's necks, making sure that everything has to be done their way. And then the magical 2 weeks come in July when this person decides to take a vacation. And it's vacation for everyone, because this person is gone and everyone seems to be working well together because we want to work to get well together. We don't need to be told this. A good manager finds the right team and lets them do their job. A bad manager, a poor manager, has to micromanage everything. Lao Tzu states that a good leader doesn't control, but operates from the background, allowing others to do things themselves, and only intervenes sparingly. There's a difference between delegating and controlling, between leading and imposing. Leading and delegating can be done softly with a soft touch, letting things move with the flow. Controlling means doing so with force, which is against the flow. In practice, we might want to take a step back a bit more often before we intervene. In many cases, the natural way of things will handle things on its own. When is enough enough? Those who know they have enough are truly wealthy, says Lao Tzu. We also have the unhealthy habit of accumulating stuff that we don't need. The aim of the wealthy, and of wealth is to become wealthier. But does increasing possessions improve life? Well, to a certain degree it does. We're all sitting here today, doesn't it? It's lovely. Having money is wonderful. But we have to know when these things become controlling for us, when they become the goal as to a benefit. Our needs come with natural limits. We only need enough food and clothing to stay alive, water to be hydrated. Too much of any of those things is harmful. Nevertheless, we accumulate more than we need, and we fear that not having all of this stuff diminishes who we are. Because in our world today, having, possessing is power. And we give it that power because we choose to see it the same way. The Tao says to us, see it differently. See where real power lies. Is there real power in the yelling? Or is there power in the quiet? Is there power in the force? Or is there power in the inaction? See things clearly, but recognize what is pure ego, and what drives us often is our ego. Having more today often means I am more, and everyone wants to be perceived as more. We also fear that we won't have enough in the future. But as we know, the future is uncertain. We don't know about the future. What we do know is what we have today. And how do we choose to live today determines the outcome of our future. Everything can be taken away from us in an instant, so choose those things that you value the most. Whoever knows contentment will be at peace forever, says Lao Tzu. But we can only know that when we have enough. We can only know that we have enough if we realize the value we attribute to the external things is based on delusion. The value we give to money is a delusion. The value we place on most things is a delusion. When we think about what truly matters, it's not the having, it's the giving freely of what we have. We aren't what we have, as none of these possessions are within our control. This includes even our own bodies. Having an excess of external things eventually becomes a burden. The things that you own end up owning you. It's good to have a nice house and money in the bank, so as long as we don't become slaves to what we own. So the goal here is to have possessions and not let them have you. Don't cling to life. This can be a delicate topic for those of us now as we face the next decades of our lives. And Lao Tzu said, I have heard that those who celebrate life walk safely among the wild animals. When they go into battle, they remain unharmed. What does he mean by that? Those who celebrate life walk safely among the wild animals. What does it mean for us? There's a difference between celebrating life and clinging to it. We cling to things in insecurity, desperation, and fear. If you cling to life, fearful of death, there's no celebration in this. There's no celebration at all because we're dominated by fear. Fear of what? Fear of nothingness? That's a different question altogether. Does the fear of death remove the joy of life? Think about what we fear and how our fears drive us to live. The fear of death is what makes us cling to life. And Lao Tzu says, those who are stiff and rigid are the disciples of death. Those who are soft and yielding are the disciples of life. Welcome change. Embrace it with all that you have because life is change. And if we change along with it, surely this is the path to happiness. The fear of death manifests itself within us many ways, which are often very subtle. Many people claim that they don't fear death because they don't fear what they can't imagine death might be. But it's not enough not to just fear death. We must embrace life. There was a thing I saw recently about a study that talked about negative thoughts versus positive thoughts, and which is better for us, to eliminate negative thoughts or to have more positive thoughts. And while having more positive thoughts is obviously good, the most important thing we can do in our life is to eliminate the negativity. That gets us far more energy, far more benefit in our lives than even doing more positive things, eliminating the negative. And this means living life without fear, seeing all of life as an adventure and embracing it. Let's be cautious of those things that we will inevitably lose. let's not cling to beauty, making us afraid of aging. Let's not cling to our reputation so that we don't care or think what others say about us. And let us not cling to our wealth so we don't waste our lives protecting it. The true fear of death lies in the idea of losing who we think we are. In war, soldiers will often go to their death to protect their idea of dying in honor. They're more afraid of dying dishonorably than dying themselves. But by clinging to the idea of ourselves and the world around us, we deny the nature of the universe. That which is change is the only constant. The story we tell ourselves today will lose its accuracy tomorrow. The same goes for the story we tell ourselves about the world. How often do we watch a news show and convince ourselves that something is urgent and tragic and must be done? And yet, tomorrow it resolves itself, or it continues and continues and continues, because we can't control it. All that we can do, the Tao says, is control ourselves. And I close tonight with wisdom from Lao Tzu. He speaks about attachment. He who clings to his work will create nothing that endures. When you hold your work to be too precious, you stay on it. It's those people who have achieved in the past and who keep talking about the past. They never move forward. Your work isn't that precious. My work isn't that precious. Do it. Be happy with it. Move on. Let yourself move to greatness. Letting go. When I let go of what I am, I become what I might be. This is powerful for all of us. Who are we? Who do we perceive ourselves to be? When we let this go, we allow ourselves room to become more than that. Modesty, he who tries to shine, dims his own light. New beginnings. My wife and I are at this stage right now. New beginnings. Our children are both in college. How wonderful. It allows us this opportunity to spend more time together. And on the bad side, it also allows us to spend more time together. That would be my wife's perspective sitting in the front row. By the way, Terry is the one who does all of these beautiful presentations. So I give the lecture. I'm the guy doing the talking, but Terry is really the one who makes all of these beautiful presentations. So new beginnings are often disguised as painful endings. And this is a great way of looking at the next world, too. This is one of the beauties of Daoism, even though they don't discuss the idea of the next life, that in a painful life, when it comes to an end, there must be something else, that all of this is a continuum. So is reincarnation and rebirth, or heaven for those of you who believe. This is all a way of saying that these terrible endings, difficulties in life, have a new, fresh beginning on the other side. Giving freely. He says the sage does not hoard. The more he helps others, the more he benefits himself. The more he gives to others, the more he gets himself. The way of heaven does one good, but never does harm. The way of the sage is to act, but not compete. Contentment. Be content with what you have. Rejoice in the way things are. When you realize there is nothing lacking, the whole world belongs to you. And there's another great quote that comes to us and says, happiness lies not in receiving what you want, but in wanting what you already have. This is the beauty of life. Look within for strength. Care about people's approval, and you will be their prisoner. How often do we find ourselves in an argument or wondering what other people think about us and letting that determine our course of action? Stubbornness. This is probably my favorite one because it is as clear as it can be. If we don't change direction, you may end up exactly where you're going. It's true. We have to look and say, is where we're going where we want to go? Just because we're on the path doesn't mean it's the right path. We can change. You have the answer. All of us have the power to know deep inside of us. He says, at the center of your being you have the answer. You know who you are, and you know what you want. When we talk to other people about these things, it's just wasting time. You know who you are. You know what you want, and you know your purpose in life. The key is connecting your head and your heart to act on what you know to be true and right. This is from Lao Tzu. Wisdom, the wise man is one who knows what he does not know. When we know our weaknesses, we make our weaknesses our strengths. By being deeply loved, someone gives you strength, while loving someone deeply gives you courage. Wealth, he says, if you realize that you have enough, you are truly rich. And in my closing thought today, I'm going to share a phrase from Aristotle. We are what we repeatedly do. He says, excellent then is not an act, but a habit. And Lao Tzu says something similar. He says, watch your thoughts, they become your words. Watch your words, they become your actions. Watch your actions, they become your habits. Watch your habits, they become your character. And watch your character, for it becomes your destiny. Thank you all very much for coming. Thank you.